My name's Susan Scott. I'm a director of the Resilience Training Company, which is part of the Wellbeing and Performance Group, which is headed up by Professor Derek Mowbray. So I don't know if you're familiar with Derek. Derek will be here very shortly. He's got a talk he's doing at 1:10. And Derek, Professor of Psychology, absolutely passionate about the prevention of stress in the workplace. So for him, it's about making sure all those events and behaviours that take place in an organisation basically don't happen. Because if they're challenging and they're triggering stress in people, that's not good, because what that's doing is preventing people from performing. And you need to perform well, you need to be able to concentrate, you need to know and be able to focus your mind in order to get the results. And we know in an organisational setting, it's all about results. So what I'm going to talk to you today is about burnout. And I chose this topic because it is a big problem at the moment. I'm noticing it more and more and more. And in fact, I did a talk yesterday here about burnout from an individual perspective, and I just asked for a show of hands who's experienced it, and so many hands went up. And in fact, what I'm noticing is it's becoming more and more of an issue in that sort of late 20s, early 30s age group, where people are absolutely throwing everything at their career and never saying no. They're perfectionists, they're really driven, and the outcome is that they don't look after themselves, they don't think about it, it becomes addictive, and the next minute they can't function. So what I'm going to talk about this morning now is actually burnout from more of a manager's perspective. Because so often we think of it as just, well, it's someone else's problem, but actually a manager needs to be just as aware of it. So for any of you that ever manage anyone, have you ever experienced within your team any members that have burnt out or been pretty close to it? Yeah? So there's some heads nodding here. Absolutely. Has anyone experienced it themselves?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is an absolute fact of life at the moment. How would you describe it? What would you think of? If I say burnout, what would that mean to you?
Exhaustion.
Lack of energy, so it's that mental and physical exhaustion. Yes? Yeah? Any other thoughts on what burnout is?
Treadmill feeling that
You're just, you're not functioning, but you've just got that sense that I've just got to keep going. And what happens with that is you lose your capability to cope. So you're starting to lose your complete sense of reality, you're exhausted, you feel very low, it leaves you feeling very low and depressed. There's the sense of almost life is out to get me, you know, you just can't cope with life. And it's miserable, completely and utterly miserable. Now, my background is a psychologist, but also as a nutritionist, I know that people that burn out, it can take anything from 18 months to 2 years to actually recover. From an organisational perspective, that is a huge waste of talent. And people quite often don't ever recover enough to come back to where they were before. They make a big life decision to say, actually, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to be that accountant and have to work 24/7. I'm going to do something quite different. And as an organisation, you've lost that talent. But actually someone that had such a purpose in their life and such aspirations, they've lost that as well. And that shouldn't happen. That's not right. Any of you in the background here, there's some more leaflets, so I'll just pass those few down to you. So that's really what I want to talk about. You know, it comes from excessive doing. And that's what we've got nowadays. These demands that are on us mean that we're always doing. And the problem with almost always doing is you get stuck. It's addictive. And you create all sorts of scenarios in your mind, because when you're always doing and you're feeling stressed, you stimulate the fight-flight response. So it's as if you're being presented with that saber-toothed tiger. What do? Do I run from it? Do I fight from it? And you produce all these hormones that help you cope with it. We've got that now on a day-to-day basis. with the demands we're dealing with. And there are so many demands. For any of you in a management role, if there's conflict in your team, that's going to be causing demands. If there's uncertainty within your organisation because you may be going through change, that's causing extra demands. If there's extra workload happening, maybe you've bought a new company, maybe there's suddenly a new project, extra demands on someone. And people typically try to cope. And they try to cope because they are terrified of saying no in case their name is top of the list of redundancy or out of the company completely. So it's almost a big taboo to say no, but it's affecting people's health as well. And it is this being permanently on. It's about doing and not renewing, because one of the things with the fight-flight response is that we are built as human beings to switch it on, to deal with the danger, and then we switch it off. But when it becomes compulsive, because you're dealing with these demands all the time, you get to the stage where you can't switch it off. And one of the things it does to your brain is that we have this amazing cortex, which as human beings we've developed, that is where we get our reasoning and our logical thinking from. Because we don't need to spend time thinking logically about whether we run from that saber-toothed tiger, we just got to get on and do it. Our brains, the cortisol hormone we release, switches that off. So people that are starting to get very stressed lose that capacity for logical thinking, which is why one of the signs you'll notice as a manager is they're suddenly not making the right decisions anymore. Things they used to do really well are not necessarily being done so well because they're losing that capacity, because they've gone into this hyper activity, and that's internal as well as what they're actually doing as well. And the important thing is finding the opportunity for them to switch off. So have the activity, but also have that recovery time. And that is what I'm noticing is missing. Pressure is a really interesting thing. One of the things I often hear from people is there is good stress and there's bad stress. No, there is not good stress. There is pressure, and if you're feeling in control, pressure is fabulous because it focuses the mind, you concentrate. I know I can do my best work when I'm under pressure. If I start to have too much pressure and I get out of control, that's when I start to get tense. And if you start getting tense, you typically have that tension in your shoulders, in your neck. There's lots of wonderful stands here with gadgets to help on that. I see Joe over here, and we were doing that yesterday. You know, that's one of the ways to reduce tension. Or you self-medicate. You have that glass of wine when you get home. Or there might be other things as well. If you remain out of control and the demands continue on you, then it becomes strain. So people talking within your team about stress, it's more likely that they're talking about either tension or, if they're suffering, strain. Because strain can become debilitating. It completely distracts you. You are focused on something else. It may become a worry because of something's happening outside work. It could be something happening inside work. The demands are too much. You've got a micromanager. You don't have time to think straight. There's too many demands on you. And you get distracted because it has a huge impact on you physically. I don't know if any of you find when you're under a lot of pressure, you find it difficult to get to sleep. That's the stress hormones doing that. It's hard to get to sleep, or you wake in the middle of the night and suddenly your whole to-do list flashes in front of your mind. And that's all those stress hormones just kicking in. And that affects you as well. So this strain has lots of physical problems, and this is where a lot of the mental health issues will come in as well, like anxiety and depression, because they would have started and eased in gradually because of the pressure and what's happening hormonally inside your body. Our bodies are like an iceberg. What you see on the outside is actually probably only about 10% of what's going on inside. Now, as managers, you really have to tune into that, because as managers, people will be trying to cover that up because they do not want to be noticed. And the big issue is about trust. Anything about being honest and open within your team is going to be about trust. And then the final stage, we've gone from pressure to tension to strain. Now it is burnout. And this is real stress. This is miserable. This is catastrophic. This is where you've gone from hyper-functioning to actually malfunction now. And this is where something needs to be done. You know, we are still like a machine, even though we're humans. If we don't use ourselves enough, we rust out. But if we use ourselves too often for something we're not built to do, then we will burn out, and you need to be conscious. The big thing is, you do not improve by doing nothing. So as a manager, if you think, well, it's their problem, they've just got to pull themselves together and then start functioning again, that's not going to happen. So what should a manager do? First of all, be attentive. Know your staff. What are they like? How do they normally perform? Are they doing something at the moment that's out of character? Because if they are, that should say to you, I need to have a conversation. And that means about being supportive. So that's the next thing, be supportive. Have that conversation. What might be causing them problems? If they've switched off their cortex, the chances are they're not recognising that something's wrong, that they're being different. People around them might be saying, are you all right? You don't seem yourself. Their nearest and dearest might say it. But you need to say to them, I've noticed various things. You need to make, what's going on? Is there something I can help you with? You've got to build that trust that they will open up. The next thing is having that conversation and having regular conversations that you talk to everyone in your team actually about how they're coping and what can be done. And the fourth one is make the adjustments. And you have a legal responsibility under the Equality Act to make those adjustments, particularly as if it has been flagged up now that someone was suffering. Because if this continues, there will become a point when this becomes actually a disability. Not to mention the duty of care you have as a manager as well. So think about those, being attentive, the support, conversations, and making adjustments. I'm actually over at stand 160, which is diagonally in the other corner, and Professor Mowbray will be there as well today. We have a couple of things. We provide workshops, e-learning programs, consulting, everything about preventing stress within the workplace. We have a particular guide which actually has just been launched this week, the manager's role in stress prevention, and this one is the actual one for managers now, telling them how to work with their team to prevent stress and the sort of conversations they should be having, and much more around the mental health aspect as well. And as I said, today's was much more about the manager's role. Yesterday was about individuals, and from an individual perspective, next month I've got a book coming out which is about how to have an outstanding career, which is basically how to actually have that career, be aspirational, be driven, but not burn out in the process. And you can do that, but you have to think about your recovery. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that's interesting. You've all got tip booklets, leaflets there, if you haven't come up to our stand. And if you're managing a team, be active. Please do, because it is so important in this crazy world right now. Thank you.